This is part 2 of the HuluCDN video setup. When we left off on part 1, we had zipped up our base and rich load files, and we were about to get them into the Creative Manager. Again, just to quickly review, zipping, we want to select the files directly and not their encapsulating folder. We select the files directly, we then choose to compress or zip them depending on what tools you're using, and then you make your zip and then name it appropriately. Your base file can pretty much be named anything you want. The rich load needs to match whatever you've defined, at least for the first upload. Needs to match whatever you defined in your manifest file. When the manifest gets uploaded, it will take a look in our system for a rich load creative called video underscore 300 by 250 underscore RL. And if that's not there, then you look at an error saying that this rich load resource was not available. Same thing for the images will need to be uploaded as well. It'll tell you that this image isn't available, and it'll actually stop the process of uploading your base file, because it'll look in the manifest file for these resources, and if these resources are not in the system yet, then it will kind of stop the upload process and make sure that you get those resources into our system. So I've already got the zip made. I'm going to just delete that guy. But this is the same process. You select the files directly, and then you upload it to our system. Our system over here is the Creative Manager. When you log in, you'll probably see maybe no campaigns or one campaign. I'm just going to double click on this one I've got set up for this demo. Actually, I should back up one step. When you log in initially, you'll come to our hub page, and then you'll click on the Creative Manager. The Creative Manager then launches a new tab, which will then look something like this, depending upon how many creative libraries you have available to you, and then you can just double click on your selected creative library for the project you're working upon. And right now we've got no creatives uploaded. So I want to upload my supporting assets first. So I'm going to click on Asset Manager. One more time, that's just up here, Asset Manager. And any of the images I might need for my creative, I'll go ahead and upload those. Let's see, we are in training. And all of my images are actually here in this images folder. I'm just going to grab all those guys. The logo, this one was hard-coded into our creative. I don't need to grab that one, but I'm just going to grab the rest. Open that up. These guys will take a moment to upload, and then we can then see them on the screen. We get a success message, and we see them populate here. We can also view them as thumbnails. And we get a little preview here, which is kind of nice in case you want to try and pick and choose from a specific piece of the creative. Rich loads, the same thing happens. We just go to the rich load section. We upload our first rich load. It'll do a little verification on the rich load itself. So there's my zip, and I'll open it up. If you do something like make a mistake, like say upload your base file here instead, it'll actually see like, oh, you're trying to upload a rich load of the manifest file. You shouldn't be doing that. So it does do some validation as you upload these things. So the rich load's uploaded now, and then I can go ahead and upload add files or base files at this point. So I'll upload add files. Go to the add files folder, grab that zip, open it on up. It'll take a moment to process. If I click on this upload first creative button, it does the exact same thing. It just opens up that same screen. But once you've uploaded your first creative, you would upload everything through this button over here. There we go, success, and then we see it pop here on the page, and we can see some information about it. Its status currently is in production. That means I can make further changes to this. Later on, when I submit it to QA, it'll turn yellow, and then once it's been approved by QA, it'll turn green here, and we'll get a different status showing up here along with that process. If for some reason QA rejects it, it turns it red, which allows me to override it again, kind of in a pseudo production type status where it's in the status where it's kind of looked at by QA, but there was something to fix, and then QA knows to go back and recheck this particular file once you resubmit to QA in the end. One thing to note, especially for our QA processes, the primary thing we focus upon is making sure the ad is a viable product, making sure the click tags work, things are loading correctly, there's not throwing any errors, so the publishers don't kick back on it. We do some kind of preliminary checking. We do try and check for other things, spelling mistakes and stuff like that, but our primary focus is making sure that the ad is a viable product. And as we see things that seem to be a little bit out of the ordinary, we will pass those along too. But if there is a problem, it's not a full QA process. Really, it's just is this ad viable kind of QA process. So you definitely want to be doing your own internal QA to make sure things are showing up the way you'd expect as well. And don't just drop it in our lap, so to speak. So it's kind of a process in partnership with each other. QA, we usually ask that if you're submitting something for QA, you want to give 2 business days. For this, usually QA is really quick. You might actually, if you submit it, like say first thing on Monday morning, you might see it back before lunch, maybe even by 10 o'clock. They're usually pretty on top of things, but just in case, we're getting a lot of creatives being submitted at one time or something's going on, you want to make sure that you budget in your timeline. You want to budget 2 business days for QA. If you're using a rich load file and you need to make changes to a rich load file, you can certainly do that post QA. You can upload as many rich loads as you want and don't have to resubmit to QA, but you want to at least get kind of the initial ad in place and QA'd and ready to go as soon as you can in your process. So that's the status over here. We've got the video, the creative file name. Hulu usually provides some kind of naming convention for your files, so you want to make sure that you're following that. You might see V1, V2 at the end of the file name here for different iterations of a particular creative, stuff like that. So your naming convention will come from Hulu or somebody up the chain. There's a creative ID, which helps us identify the creative in the system. It's a dynamic ad, means it's got things that populated on the fly. Some other information, some estimated file sizes. Usually these are fairly accurate, but there are occasions where it's not completely accurate. The video section doesn't register because the video we're loading is not from the Flashtalking system. This would look for videos from the Flashtalking system, but because they're coming from the HuluCDN, it doesn't show up in this column. There's a rich load. This is the API version we're using. And then I've got some actions here on the side, or I can right click to get more information about this particular creative. And the very first thing I'm just going to do is test an ad server just to see this working. The page is a little bit different from when you were testing locally. We get some information here on the side. This is a page that you can, like if you're having a problem with this particular creative, you can say, hey, everything's working great, but we're having a little problem getting the text to render, or the video is not stopping at the end. If you have a problem with this, you can just basically send us this link, and then we can kind of work backwards from there to kind of take a look at your thing and see, what it is going on. Or maybe your file size has gotten way out of control and you're like, I'm trying to understand why your file size is so big. So with this link, we can, work backwards and take a look at the creative and see what it is that's actually happening here. But this is also kind of a password protected page. So unless you're logged into our system, the test in AdServe page, the TIA page, is not available unless you're logged in. We do usually offer a special kind of login in case you want to submit to somebody, share these files with somebody who's not in our system. We have what's called an approver login, where we kind of set up a specific login just so that they can see the creatives, but they can't actually access anything from the hub page. They can't, all these buttons would be grayed out for them, but they could log into our system far enough to actually see a test and AdServe page that you shared with them. You can also click down here and you can share a public preview Sometimes this occasionally gets a little bit funky. You usually want to test it out after the fact to make sure that it's working the way you'd expect. You notice that the URL is a little bit different, creativepreview.flashtalking.net, and this is a randomly generated number associated with that creative, so that you should be able to share this. Occasionally there are some issues with making sure that it updates correctly, or if you have many versions you're trying to share, I think sometimes there's some issues with that, but usually this works pretty well. But definitely do test it before you send it out to a client. This doesn't need a password to see it, but they have to have this very specific URL. And then if you want to stop sharing, you can come back here, hit that same button, and then check remove public sharing. I'm going to actually close this out really quick. So if I just click back there, I can remove public sharing. I can say, okay, so now this video is private again. And that link that I had before doesn't come up anymore. Let's see. So I'm going to close this guy out. This is my local version. Let's see. So we saw the test and ad serve page. We've got these kind of quick buttons here on the side where we can preview or look at the version library for this particular creative. The version library has to do with what kind of versions you're making or what kind of instant ad variable changes you're making to a particular version. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. You can also, from there, this is available through the right-click menu. So if I right-click on this creative, I can go into the version library, and I can make a new version of this particular creative. So this is the only version I've got so far, which is the default version. I'm going to edit this. And let's see. These are the instant ad variables that I set up in the manifest file. So this is the rich load variable. These are the image variables at the top. And then these are the text variables just down here below. This is everything back here matching up to the instant ad variables we defined back in the manifest file. So when this uploads to our system reads this manifest file and then kind of puts these things into place. So if I want to change out the rich load, I can just click on here. I get this little interface, kind of like the asset manager, and I can select another rich load to populate this with. So maybe I had a rich load for the pre part of the campaign and one for the post part of the campaign. So I can select the secondary rich load at this point and make a version pointing to that. I'm just going to cancel. I can swap out images, and if I need another background, maybe I have another background here. I can upload an image from here as well. I think maybe I've got another one in here. No. Check one more. It's the pink. Looking for a different background image. That's the same pink one. I have a green one around someplace, but I think I'm not going to find it right now. Nope. I'll try one more. It's the wrong size, but let's go ahead and grab it anyway. I'm going to open this up. It's kind of twice the height that we need, but I'm going to grab this one and select this one instead. And I can preview my changes. Let me change a couple more. I can change, I might just change this to rich load updated containing video. I'm going to change this text to something else. And yeah, I'm going to preview the changes. So I've got the green background now, and this text has changed. This rich load containing video has changed. The image looks a little bit squashed because I think it's actually trying to fit the 600 pixel tall image into a 300 pixel tall box. But if I had the appropriately sized graphic for the background, it would show up fine. I'm going to save this as a different version, and I'm going to call this just version 2. And I'll hit save as. So I've got the default version from the original, and I've got a version 2 now. They're both showing up here on the side, and now when I test an ad server, I have the default version showing up first, which is this guy, and then I can click on version 2. You'll see the green band at the top and the updated text here. If I had a different video to swap in, I could have changed that instant ad variable as well. But this is how I make versions manually, kind of one by one. I can also click here and export versions. This exports a spreadsheet I can then update. So I get a little notification here saying that it's going to be ready in a minute. Let me close this out. There's my spreadsheet. I can download it from here, or I can click on the little alarm thing and I can download it from this side window. I can show in Finder. I am just going to drag it. Huh. No. So it's in my downloads folder. I'm just going to drop it off over here with everything else and pop this guy open. This will open up Excel for me. And if I'm making a bunch of versions all at once, this is really handy if I want to do that. So this takes everything that is currently in my creative library and makes it available to make versions with. So if I have a bunch of, say, background images or other visual assets or other rich loads that I want to use in making versions, I want to make sure that they are uploaded to my creative library first before I export this. If I need to export it again, that's no big deal. I just export it again. But this makes the spreadsheet. You can see my 2 versions I made here. And from this point, it's just a matter of copying and pasting a few things and making the modifications you want. So I'm just going to copy and paste. That's the base file name. I'm going to give this a version 3 name. It has to be a unique version name for each of these guys. This guy, I'm just going to extend down here. And then you notice there's like a little drop down. This basically says these are the rich loads you had in your creative library at the point of export. So it makes a list of all those available rich loads so you don't have like a spelling error or something. So if I had more than one rich load, I could select at this point. Same thing for the images. Notice the drop down. These are all the images I have in my creative library at this point. So I'm actually going to copy this first one again and paste that in place. There we go. I'm just going to take poster and bring that down. End frame also. Oops. Just copy and paste. Give this some version 3 text. So something different. Something different again. I'm going to copy. Oops. Didn't want to go to that. Get back into Excel. Copy and I'm clicking on the link. Go up one, paste. Keep that as true. And then the URL, did it again. I want to keep the same URL. So copy and paste. So if I had a different Hulu URL for the video, I could just go ahead and select that. I got a 404 because it didn't have the extension on there. So I'm going to save this document and then I'll close it. And I can go back into the Creative Manager now. I'm going to just dismiss all these messages. close this pane. I'm going to go and import versions now. I'm going to import that spreadsheet, which is back here. There we go. Open. It'll take a moment. So it's imported the spreadsheet. Now it's processing the spreadsheet. And once it's processed the spreadsheet, we have to go through and kind of visually inspect the changes we made. So I'm going to preview the versions now. So this is version 3 I'm looking at. This is version 3 text and back to the original video and background. This is the only change. That's the only thing showing up here. If I had more versions that I imported, it would come up in this list here. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to confirm the import of this one new version. And it'll just take a moment, but it'll show up here as version 3. Here we go. I can click open if I want to see it there, but I can see that version 3 here is here also, and I can just do like a little preview in the pane here on the side if I want. And I can go through, and if I want, I can go into the version editing mode and make more changes. That would be fine too. But this is pretty much that's the version I just imported there. This one looks like it just went a little over the file size, so it gives me a warning, which means I can still work with it, but it means that I can't fully submit it for QA until it's been fixed or excused. The campaign manager can change your campaign limits if everyone's in agreement for it, because this can incur more charges. That's why we give you the warning. So anything over a certain amount can incur more charges if we're not careful. So we just want to make sure that we're all in agreement that everything's cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is the campaign, the creative library itself. This is something that only you and people in your same business entity see, in your same group. This isn't shared with Hulu at this point. And if you want to share this particular creative library with Hulu, we come back here to kind of the main screen where we see the list of creative libraries. I'm on the top one here. And we want to share the creative library, which is this button. And what we do is we share it with somebody in the Hulu organization. The campaign manager can tell you who that is. It might be Vivi or somebody, but somebody who's in the Hulu organization. You type in their email here and you hit share. And basically, once you share the creative library, everyone in the Hulu organization, just that if you just share it with, for example, Vivi at Hulu, everyone in the Hulu organization who has access to Hulu's creative library now has access to your creative library that you just shared. So this is how we give access to Hulu, the kind of parent organization for all these things. And this way, Hulu maintains separate creative libraries for the different agencies working with them, and there's no overlap between them. So I'm going to cancel out of this, but that's how you share a creative library. It's just this button right over here on the main kind of campaign window. If you need help with any of this stuff, help here has to do with help with the Creative Manager. So if you're having problems with using any of the Creative Manager versions and stuff like that, you're certainly welcome to email any one of us here at Flashtalking, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Make sure you include the Hulu at Flashtalking alias, because that will get the attention of most of the important people, and then they can pass it along to somebody in studio if necessary, and we can help you out too. You're welcome to email either me, Cody at Flashtalking, or Scott at Flashtalking about any of this stuff too. And then templates here, this is templates and help with code. So if there's something in our API you have questions about, or you're looking for a template to start you out with that isn't the one we gave you for these Hulu examples, you can certainly go through and look at further documentation here. There's also the JS docs that get exported with our API, which ends up being kind of useful sometimes. So if you want to find out more about, say, click tags, I can look down here and find out more about click tags. And this gives me kind of the technical explanation of how click tags work when related to our API. And it gives you an example and some further definition too, which is pretty nice. So a lot of good stuff here in the help section that you can take a further look at. And again, you're always welcome to reach out and contact us, and we'll do what we can to help you out. So this is basically the creative manager at this point. You've uploaded things, you shared your creative library with the client, you test things out. So working locally, I fully advocate working locally using some kind of local server. Again, I really like the Sublime server for this, but whatever you end up using is fine. Working locally gets you 95% of the way through your project. You always, once you get it up here, you do want to do testing to make sure that things are working the way you'd expect, that your ad is working well on a test and ad serve page, and that things are functioning the way you'd expect for all the versions that you create as examples. So make sure you don't neglect that last step, and things work well here. I guess the one other thing I should probably mention is if you're submitting to QA, you can right mouse click and where is it? Submit ad. So down here, we just click on submit ad for QA, and then you would fill in the information. If there's any specific notes for testing, you can add them down here. If there's anybody else you want to get the QA response email to, you can put them here as well. These emails usually come from the campaign setup. So whoever is set up in the campaign as a media buyer and whoever is the primary contact for your campaign will get the emails. If you're not the primary contact for the campaign or the media buyer, you would put your email here too, so you'd at least get the QA response back to you. Again, QA, we want to set aside 2 business days for QA. It usually is much faster. In most general circumstances, they'll get back to you probably the same day without a problem, but we want to make sure that we allot the amount of time necessary for it. In a pinch, in a really extreme case, if you need urgent QA, giving us as much notice as you can is very helpful. If you can just reach out and say, hey, Cody, or hey, Scott, I've got an urgent unit coming in for QA later today. Can you please make sure somebody's available around 3 o'clock? And we'll do our best to accommodate to make sure that this is happening. We can't guarantee anything or make any early promises, but if you let us know ahead of time that you're running a little bit late and you need urgent QA, that's fine. And again, your ad, if you're just making changes to a rich load file, but your base file is pretty much done, you can submit that for QA and get that done, and then keep making changes to your rich load file and uploading that and replacing your rich load file as much as you want. That's not a big deal. Or make a version 2 of your rich load file. So creative changes don't really affect the QA process so much, as long as click tags work and the ad is a viable product and not going to cause any pushback from the advertisers because files are missing or something like that. So definitely get that QA in early. I'm going to cancel out of this. So that's about it. If you have any questions, again, we're here to help. The earlier ask us questions, the better for everyone. Nobody wants to, be answering things in a panic, and we want to have time to address your concerns and have time to, explain things, make sure everyone's, happy with the explanation and understanding things. So the more time you give us to answer questions, the better it is for everybody too. Thanks for your time. This is Cody of Flashtalking, and hope you have a good day. Thanks.